actually enjoy treating your customers like a piece of shit, because that's how I felt when I went to the Alamo Draft House. Okay? You know what? I didn't know that I wasn't supposed to text in your little crappy-ass theater. It was too f***ing dark in that place for me to find my seat, alright? I was using my phone as a flashlight to get to my f***ing seat. So excuse me for using my phone in USA, United States of America, where you are free to text in a theater. I was not aware that I couldn't text in your theater, all right? I've texted in all the other theaters in Austin, and no one ever gave a fuck about what I was doing with my fucking phone, all right? And it was on silent. It wasn't on loud. It wasn't bothering anybody. You guys obviously were being assholes to me, and I'm sure that's what you do, you know, to rip people off. You take my money, and then you throw me out. You know, I will never be coming back to your Alamo Draft House or whatever. I'd rather go to a regular theater where people are actually polite. And, you know, I'm going to tell everyone about how you are. And I'm pretty sure you guys are being on purpose. So thanks for making me feel like a customer. Thanks for taking my money.
It's chocolate. You should be very proud, Detective.
Shut up!
You've made a delicious life for yourself.
Said shut the fudge up! What?
You don't come near here. You stay away from here.
Here he comes.
What?
Are you listening, David? I was saying how much I admire you and your ice creams. You have incredible taste in fine ice creams.
What the fudge did you just say?
6 delicious flavors. They're so lovely. And once they're gone, David, they're gone.
David, step away from the prisoner. Step away, David. Step away.
What's in the box?
I'm not gonna tell you until
What's in the box? What's in the box?
We each have our weaknesses. It appears that gluttony is my sin of choice. And you add the mystery. I couldn't resist.
What's in the malted fudging box?
It's empty, David. It's empty.
No! It was full. 6 delicious flavors. Only available this month.
I know. It was delivered to your home. It was delectable.
Do you think anybody's gonna get, like, offended by this?
Just tall white Karens.
Monotony. It comes in all shapes and sizes. Dull, tedious, just plain boring. But what is this? A contender, perhaps? Something unboring by the looks of it. Jabs right at dull, an uppercut to tedium, something that keeps you on your toes, keeps your head on a swivel. A knockout punch to your old, boring workouts. Welcome to Fight Camp.
The Greening the Gateway Cities program provides trees that are planted by DCR foresters and crews hired from local communities. When you sign up as a potential tree recipient, a forester will visit your home or business to determine the best location and species of tree for maximum energy efficiency. Easy care instructions are provided, and it's all free. Find out if you're in the zone and learn more at maurbancanopy.org.
we're honest, who wants to roll less travel? It's harder to teach us. Who wants the difficult route?
If you support safety in our schools, you will support the National Guard to come in here and keep our students safe.
People say, these students have changed. These students are lazy.
Your children aren't learning disability, they lazy.
Get students engaged so they don't want to skip class, so they want to be in their classrooms.
There are teachers in this profession who should not be teachers. There are teachers in this profession who don't care about children.
These students don't want to learn. No, the adults have changed. See, the parents don't have the back of the teachers.
He ain't slow. He ain't got no learning problem. His parents didn't give him a foundation.
Young people, as a nation, we sorely need the depth and breadth of your intelligence, character, and also your clarity.
I think about, in particular, the history of people that look like me who are getting cheated.
So if you're asking me right now as an educator, what's wrong with these kids? There's nothing wrong with them.
Teachers are the most important people in the world.
They're whimpering in fear, and we're sitting here scared of them.
Because if they get it right, they'll change the world because they're in charge of the most important resource, and that's our children.
Shaolin shadow boxing and the Wu-Tang sword style. If what you say is true, the Shaolin and the Wu-Tang could be dangerous. Do you think your Wu-Tang sword can defeat me?
On guard. I'll let you try my Wu-Tang style.
Same with you. Same with you.
Set out to get you with a fine-tooth comb. I was soft inside. There was something going on.
Oscar Mike Radio is a proud podcast partner of Reach Across America Radio, heard every Thursday at 11 a.m. and Sunday at 8 a.m. Eastern. They're also big supporters of the nonprofit I Got Your Six, 2 Lives at Once. And with every wreath you sponsor through Oscar Mike Radio, $5 goes back to this great organization dedicated to making a difference in the lives of veterans, law enforcement, firefighters, and first responders battling PTSD. 2 Lives at Once pairs these brave men and women together with dogs rescued from kill shelters. In this way, 2 lives are saved at the same time by saving each other. Donate now. Go to reachacrossamerica.org/Oscar Mike Radio to help. That's reachacrossamerica.org/Oscar Mike Radio.
Master Yoda I am. And listen you must to hulazoom.com.
Shaolin.
Oscar Mike.
Ask yourself, are you better off than you were 100 days ago? Trump came back, not to lead, but to punish. He purged loyal Americans from government, fired heroic generals, demanded loyalty over competence, turned the Justice Department into his revenge machine, let this guy steal your private data, and wreck Social Security. Our allies betrayed. Ukraine sold out to Putin, turning our government into a police state, kidnapping American citizens, sending innocent people to foreign hellholes, snatching students off the street for tweeting. Then came the tariffs, markets crashing, retirements wiped out, America isolated, weak, China winning the trade game. He pardoned terrorists and criminals. This isn't a second term. It's Trump's second chance to end America, and it's working. So no, you're not better off. You're not safer. Nothing is cheaper. The economy is worse. Our country is in danger. Just imagine what the next 100 days will bring.
Can you dig it? Can you dig it?
Yeah.
Can you dig it?
Like some motherfucking action heroes in it. Yeah.
This is blasphemy. This is madness. This is a proof.
Step into the twisted mind of my literature, designed to get into the depths of your mind, administer sickness around to mimic the likes of snuff cinema. What you must get into, you're nothing but pops. Remember you Homer and Happy Simpson, son. Nothing Ithaca. Talkers like the northern half of Korea's peninsula. ESP your island like the booth, something sinister. ESP your island like the booth, something sinister. ESP your island like the booth, something sinister.
All right, that's your boy Sinister One broadcasting live from the City of Champions. You are watching The Booth. It is May 6th, first Tuesday I got to thank my guest from last week, Jed Resco, Sebastian St. Hubert, who's going to be doing this bike ride from Boston to New York City, Times Square. He's going to try to do it within 10 hours on his bike. So great for him to come on the show. They were both on last week, so I could give big props to them. My two guys are on here. First Tuesday, Kenneth Diesenhof, Robert Resnick of the Corridor. Let me get into my sponsors real quick, because we got a lot of shit to talk about. Michael Douglas Bretto, MDB Electronics. Either got control that needs to be fixed, get it out to him. Back to 24, 48 hours, you're back to gaming. Deanna Marie's music, 494,000 streams. Keep it, follow it, listen to it, support. Tactical Target Systems, those targets I get. Reach out to tacticaltargetsystems.com. I love Boston sports. Tonight's game 2 of the Celtics. Make sure to go on and support ilovebostonsports.com. And then Vianna Marie pictured there at Kimberly Ann Empowerment Photography. Ladies, if you want to take those photos, reach out to Kimberly Ann Empowerment Photography. And then Underwatch Protective Services. If you need any type of security, black-owned business, Daryl Smith, reach out to Underwatch Protective Services. And then my buddy Larry, who's come out and he's doing some handyman service. That's his number there. Reach out to him. He'll come around and do some of those small things around the house that you need to get done. I had an old Sputnik type antenna on the side of my house from like the 50s or 60s that looked like Skynet. He came over and took that off the house. I was scared to take it off. And before we get into the news booth, I got my guys on here, and you know what? We talk a lot about things on this show. What's up, Felicia, in the chat? I've got my Godzilla -1 cup right here that you sent me for my birthday in October, so I'm real happy with this. Actually, I got to get it on camera, but I got to mention something. We got a lot of shit to talk about tonight, but Rob, as you guys know, in the upper left-hand corner, Rob Resnick is up there, and he's had this backdrop: we the people, the Constitution, Bill of Rights, all of that. You know, the principles that this country was built on. And the crazy thing is a lot of things that are happening in this country right now. We talked about this. We talked about this stuff during Trump's first term. We talked about this stuff before he even got in on his first term. And every month when Rob comes on here, I need people to pay attention to that backdrop, because that means nothing more to this country than it does right now. It means a lot, and we're going to really get into it. So the first news booth story is today. Again, this is my top news booth story every week until he's caught. Turn him in. Davinci Leonard. This is the young man who shot 2 people outside of Urban Air, seeking a double murder suspect. This is a guy who the street word is he shaved his hair off. The street word is that he's staying with a girlfriend or a girl or something like that. And again, I've talked about this on the show, but Ken's a defense attorney. I'm going to let these guys, and Rob is a JAG officer, retired. Again, I'm just going to put this out there, and that way you can hear from the lawyers. If you are a woman and you're hiding this boyfriend or baby daddy in your house after he's committed 2 murders, guess what? If the feds or whoever come knocking on your door, well, they're probably going to come crashing down your door. You're going to be charged with this murder. I'm going to let Ken talk about that, because this is a big deal. Ladies, if you're hiding this guy out, you could catch a murder charge.
Well, the technical term would be accessory after the fact, which an accessory after the fact in Massachusetts, now granted, we're going to make sure I'm talking only about state law, not federal, and not other jurisdictions, the penalty matches the underlying crime. For example, if Sinister One were to go steal a Snickers bar from a market and you hit him out, you could be charged accessory after the fact from shoplifting or larceny from a building, which has a maximum penalty of 5 years in state prison. A murder is natural life sentence, so she could be charged with accessory after the fact, even conspiracy, obstruction of justice, possibly intimidating a witness. There is no question that if we don't know, first of all, we don't know, so we can't start accusing anyone. If this is true, this woman or other individual is facing a lot of legal difficulties. At the very least, you could be charged obstruction of justice and witness intimidation.
Wow.
If the gentleman is armed and he's carrying a weapon, You could also be charged with a joint venture for carrying an unlicensed firearm or a large capacity possession of ammunition. He's carrying a dangerous weapon, same thing. So anything that he can be charged with, you can be charged with too. You know, you don't have to actively call the police on him. However, if you are knowingly giving him shelter, you can be charged and face a lot of prison time, regardless if they can't charge him.
Yeah, I've been talking about this on the show, and I'm just a host. And sometimes people don't get it. So I just wanted my legal guys to reiterate that. Anything you want to add to that, real quick, R Squared?
No, that was exactly right. If you know somebody committed a crime, or you reasonably should know they committed a crime, you cannot let them stay with you. Period.
And a lot of people do. And the sad thing is, there's a lot of people who get tied up into that, and that's the sad thing, and it's not good at all. Also in the news booth, we had our third accident involving a commuter rail train. 76-year-old Cohasset man dead after his truck was struck by a commuter rail train on the 3A line. It's time to start rethinking these crossings. I don't know why railroad crossings don't have what we have in the transit way for the buses that we put in after 9/11. These are poles and barriers that come up out the ground so nobody can drive into the right of way. I don't know why railroad crossings don't have something like that yet. Why do we depend on just wood coming down and keeping people off the tracks, which seems not to work in some areas? I see Rob shaking his head. Rob?
Because, remember, before I moved back up here, I was in Florida where we had these type of things all the time. And it's always the same. It's always the same thing. 90% of the time, at least, somebody sees the guardrail come down and they choose stupidly, moronically, if I could quote Ken, they choose to drive around the barrier. It's not like they didn't see it. It's not like they didn't know. It's not like they didn't know the train was coming. But for some reason, and in some cases it might be suicide by train, but most of the time it's an intentional, stupid decision to think, I don't want to sit here for 2 minutes while the train goes by, and these people drive around the barrier. It is entirely unacceptable. Now, the fact that people died, it's a tragedy. You can't do much about it. The estate's going to be liable for some damages, but it's just the most ridiculous thing. I don't understand why so many people are doing this, quite frankly.
Yeah,
it's unfathomable
crazy
to me.
The two before this one were both suicides, which is sad. This gentleman was 76, so either he was impatient or mentally I've already said.
But remember, it's not like he just kept going. He had to drive around. He had to zigzag around the barriers. So it's not like it's an accident. It can't happen by accident. It can't.
Right. And it's sad. It's just a sad thing, and the fact that it's been 3 in the last month in this area is it's sad, because when these drivers are hitting people and killing people, they have to bring a crisis management team out. Now that engineer, he gets pulled. And you got to go down for drug testing and all sorts of crap, mental health type of observances, and you start to lose pay that you got to wait for to get back. It is just crazy stuff. So I'm sorry to hear this, but something's got to be kind of figured out. Also in the news booth, go ahead.
If I may say something, first of all, the old joke about anytime you make something foolproof, someone goes out and builds a better fool. Look, I agree those things should come up and be nice, but they're also very expensive, and they're simply a question of money. Now, if I may do a quick journey down memory lane, in the 1980s, when living in New Jersey, we had a number of incidences where this is happening, because what happens is the gates were coming down even though there was no train. This was an electrical problem, it was an engineering issue, not. So what a lot of people were doing is they didn't believe the train was coming, and they were going around the gates and getting hit by the train. One of the engineers who I kind of knew through my school put a proposal together, said, look, why do we have these level crossings? That makes no sense. Why don't we have, dig a hole underneath the track so people go underneath the train and the train go on top? All right? Sounds like a very simple solution, right? keep the tracks where they are, dig a hole underneath them. People go down, they come up, right? Very practical solution. It would make, car and train accidents almost extinct. And everybody liked the idea until they looked at one simple thing. You guys guess what it is?
Price tag.
Thank you. It just cost a fortune. And that's why they never did it. And I think I'm not an engineer, so I don't know how much this would cost to put up these pilings.
Mm-hmm.
But they'll probably cost a fortune. And right now the MBTA doesn't have the money or wants to spend on other things. And I agree with Rob. I'm sorry. You got to be pretty damn stupid or intentional to go around these gates.
Mm-hmm. It just bothers me. That's why I was.
Oh, it bothers me too.
This is crazy.
This is insane, and I've watched it happen. I have been at level crossings and watched people go. Have one car stop in front of them, and the guy behind him goes around that car and over and through the gates.
So the funniest thing too, and here's the thing where we go with what Rob was saying. Brockton, when they reopened this commuter rail line, Brockton was considered the safest on this line because why? They had no railroad crossings. Everything was over a bridge. And yet, even though Brockton was deemed the safest, it hasn't been because we've had more people hit by the train due to either suicides or we had people who they can't wait. They have gates in the station that come down that tells people you can't cross, but for some reason people think the train's going to leave the station without them, so they run in front of the train as the train's coming into the station, and then guess what? They slip and fall and they get hit or whatever. Right. We've had these type of fatalities. I yelled at a young kid one day while waiting for the train because he did the exact same thing, and I yelled at the kid. I said, hey, what do you think your mother's going to say if she has to come up here and identify your body because you ran in front of this train? The train's not going anywhere. He must have been about 12 years old. He almost started to cry. And I felt bad, but another person came up and said, hey, he's right. He's not picking on you. But yeah, the last thing you want is your mother coming here, because the mother drops him off at the train stop and he's, so it is one of these things where you just got to realize, man, it's not worth it, people. You're never going to win against a train.
Look, man versus train. Train wins every time.
Yeah, you're never going to win. Also in the news booth, this is the society of this. This story here shows us where our society is right now as a whole. A racist Karen in a school playground had her pocketbook picked up by an autistic 5-year-old child. A 5-year-old child accidentally picked up the pocketbook, assumed that it might have been his mother's or whatever. The issue here is that this woman went on this racist slur tirade against this 5-year-old boy that was caught on camera. And it gets caught on camera, and now both people, the parents of the 5-year-old boy, set up a GoFundMe. And then the woman sets up a GoFundMe because now she's viral and she's receiving all types of threats and blah, blah, blah. But now she's like, well, I got to move. I'm the victim. And guess what? She has raised now close to $700,000 on GoFundMe, while this autistic 5-year-old boy who had the racial slurs only has received $324,000. This is the byproduct of the MAGA mentality. This is the same thing with President Trump. I'm the victim, I'm the victim, I'm the victim. And then come see me at a $1.5 million plate benefit down in Mar-a-Lago. And I see you, I'm let Rob talk about that. That's Rob, I see you nodding your head. This is that mentality that's been bled into our society.
Yeah, I was actually shaking my head at the GoFundMe page. I mean, everybody in there, we have, 330 million people in this country. I think we have 300 million GoFundMe pages. People, live your own life. It's one thing when you want to reach out because somebody's having a terrible tragedy and they have, hundreds of $1,000s in medical bills and people want to do something nice. That's great. That's the way society should be. But I'm telling you, every day I hear about these GoFundMes because somebody just wants something. I mean, come on. It's ridiculous.
Ken,
there
your
needs to
thoughts?
be standards.
Yeah. Ken, you want to add to that?
Yeah, Rob is right, as usual. He took the words literally right out of my mouth. I will just say this. This has been a byproduct of the social media revolution. It's both good and bad. Everybody now thinks that they have how shall I put it, a divine calling to become the center of the universe, and it's driving me crazy. As Rob said, if there's a person with catastrophic medical, or like a person whose husband has just died and left her with debts and 2 young children, that's another story.
Yeah, I just Margaret, what's going on? I see you in chat. I just saw a guy. His dog, a Cane Corso, got hit by a car, and the dog needed emergency surgery, and he just didn't have it. And he put it up there, and he says, "I just need people's help," and he was able to raise $4,500 towards the $6,000. Things like that. That's kind of good. That's the thing. But like I said, if you're a racist and you're looking for money to get a new house, and you get this money for a new house, now GoFundMe does check on this money, and they also make sure you pay taxes. So people need to realize, if you got $700,000 coming at you at the end of the year, guess what you're getting from GoFundMe? They're sending you a W-2. You got to claim that.
Yeah, that's the other thing people don't understand. And if that's the other thing that people get shocked. If you set up a GoFundMe page and you receive money, that is deemed to be taxable income as far as the IRS is concerned.
Right.
That is no different than you getting a job, getting a bonus, whatever. That's all taxable income.
And you can't, for other people too, I see people doing this also, but this is a no-no. You can't ask and set up GoFundMes for lawyers' fees. That's a no-no. GoFundMe shuts those pages down. So anybody who thinks that you can go on there and say, "Hey, I got arrested and I got to raise lawyer fees," can't. That's a no-no. That's a part of their stipulation. Ray Hennison, what's going on? I see you in the chat. Margaret, I see you in the chat. In the entertainment booth, just one topic to just talk about. It's big news. Gears of War Reloaded in 120 frames per second will hit Xbox and PlayStation for the first time on August 26th. And then in the sports booth, I remember I think Ken used to play that game with me when that first came out. That was when Xbox first hit Gears of War.
Oh, God, that's years. You're aging both of us right now. You realize that.
That was it. Game 2's tonight, people. Celtics lost last night in overtime, 108-105. Look, they were the victims of their own destiny last night. They had a lot of mismatches allowed. They took way too many three-point shots. They'll bounce back tonight. They're still going to take the Knicks in 5. And then also in sports booth news, Baltimore Ravens release Justin Tucker, who is their dead-on, spot-on kicker, but he's tied up in this real nasty sexual assault allegations, and he's done. He is all done. They've dropped him. I don't think anybody's going to sign him, and he's out there, but I don't think anybody's going to sign him. Last week was the draft. How'd it go for you guys in New York, Rob? How'd it look? How'd you draft? You happy with it?
Yeah, very much so. The Giants had their best draft in a long time. They did a lot of things right. First of all, you have to, the draft is not the only thing. You've got to do your offseason picks, between free agents, between signing your players. There's a lot of things that have to fit together. And this was the best year the Giants have had in easily a decade, by picking up some key players, knowing what they needed to do in the draft, making a move to get Jackson Dart. I think they're in great shape. I mean, look, it takes more than one good season, one good draft to make the Super Bowl, but they made a huge step to become competitive again. And I think they could be above 500. I think they could, look, they got to take a game from the damn Cowboys at some point, and then I'll be happy.
Mm-hmm. We'll see. It was a good draft for a lot of teams, even though that this draft class wasn't as popular. Ken, were you happy with the Patriots draft?
Every time I'm happy with the Patriots draft, it blows up in my face. Every time I think they did horribly, I turn out looking like an idiot. And so I'm keeping my mouth shut this year because I'm wrong every time they do it.
I think the Patriots had a great draft.
Okay, great. You guys can say that. I'm keeping my mouth shut because I don't want to jinx it. Because I'll say something stupid and they'll like, 4 guys will drop dead of injuries. There'll be a guy we found out is a closet cocaine addict. And, there's me another person who was actually entered this country without inspection is being deported by Trump. So
Well, speaking of deportations and stuff, let's get into the legal booth. And here in Boston, this is a big one. I got to ask Ken if he's heard some rumblings about this one, but this was big. For those who didn't know, Boston City Councilor Tania Fernandez Anderson was up on charges for she hired a family member and then misappropriated funds to pay that person a $13,000 bonus, but broke the payments up and paid it over time. That's a no-no. I'm pretty sure this isn't nothing new. I'm pretty sure things like this always goes on at these levels, but it's wrong. It's a no-no. She got caught, and she has now shocked the Boston city government because she has decided that she's not going to take that chance of getting placed into jail for 20 years. She took the plea deal, and she's going to do 1 year, 1 day jail term, and have to pay back $17,000 in restitution. So she's going to pay back the $13,000 that she paid as a bonus, and then the $4,000 I think goes to the courts. Ken, is that how that works?
Well, the courts will act as an agent. I don't know exactly who's getting the restitution.
Mm-hmm.
It may go to the general fund. There may be. It depends on how they structure it, and I didn't look at the details.
So, as a defense attorney, do you think that this was a good deal for her to take versus looking at the 20 years?
As a defense attorney, it's not a good deal. It's a smart deal.
Mm-hmm.
She limited her exposure. She knows exactly how much money she's going to pay. It's a smart deal. You know, the good deal is her not to do the damn crime in the first place. That was the smart.
Right. Well,
but
so
yes, I think she was smart. She again lowers her profile. We'll forget about this in 2 weeks.
Well, here's the funny thing about why she was hung, and a lot of people don't realize this. You know, Cash App, Venmo, all these little apps where you think you're transferring money to people and friends for, fees, PayPal. This is how she was caught. This is, she was paying this person using Cash App and Venmo, and now all of that stuff is documented. So, part of that was they have the evidence. So, this plays into it. I see you making a face, Ken. Are you not happy with that being used as evidence, or?
I mean, there's a reason why the mob deals in cash, okay? The face that I'm making is the anger of the stupidity.
Oh, okay. As a defense attorney, I get it now. I see where you're headed.
I mean, I don't know if you guys remember Jerry Springer paying for prostitutes with a check.
Yes.
Again, I tell people all the time, it's like, and I have cases right now where drug dealers who have Venmoed money to each other. And I'm going, it's like the people who text and post, if you're committing crime, for God's sake, stay off of social media. And that's what just gives me pain. Now, I guess in a way it's better because it's easier to catch criminals. It's easier to prove people innocent because there's a record of it and says, no, that was my money. I paid this person. Here's the receipts. I paid the taxes on it. I'm good to go. So it's a double-edged sword. That it helps protect the innocent, but God damn it, people, stop committing crimes using Venmo.
When you do Venmo and stuff, it allows you to say what you're giving them the money for. I mean, what if you just put the pizza emoji and said, "Hey, I gave you $1,300 for pizza"?
Right.
I mean, could you use that as a defense and say, "No, I never. That $1,300 was for pizza"?
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm about to say. There's a case right now in Middlesex County. You may have not heard about a brothel that was catering.
I've heard about.
Okay. Now, what they did was when they paid, some paid in cash, some paid by Venmo, they instructed their people to put down for therapy. So the argument could be made, those records are protected by doctor-patient privilege because building records are protected by doctor-patient privilege.
HIPAA, yep, okay.
So if they were arguing that you can't get these records because it said it was clearly marked therapy. And right now there's an argument over whether they can use a Rule 17 subpoena to get them or not.
Wow.
So yes.
Yep. That's what we do. I mean, in our fantasy, I can't say that. I can't. I know someone in their fantasy league that's a commissioner. When they pay out their payouts, it's for dinner.
There you go. Yeah.
You know, because fantasy football is a big deal, and you know they're coming after those. They're coming after that now for taxes. So be careful.
Oh yeah,
commissioners out there with big money leagues. Also in the legal booth. This is I don't want to botch his name, but Moshin Maswadwadi. He was released from federal custody. He is the Columbia student who was snatched up by ICE around the same time as the woman in Somerville was snatched up that was down in Louisiana, who they are now trying to get up in Vermont. And while these two people were released, ICE is now has to reverse the termination of they had to backtrack. They actually backtracked and reversed the termination of legal status for these international students. I remember you guys were talking about this, and go ahead, Ken.
Okay. Let me make this very clear. And this is what's driving me freaking crazy, and every other immigration attorney. ICE doesn't have the authority to do squat with regarding to statuses.
Right. That's the reason why they backed off.
Right. There are two agencies that are allowed to revoke status. One is the United States Citizenship and Immigration Service, more commonly known as CIS. They can revoke your status if they believe that you violated just something like or lied in your application. The other one is the Executive Office of Immigration Review, known in the trade as EOR, or more commonly known as Immigration Court. It's not a court; it's an administrative tribunal. Those are the only two people that can revoke statuses. ICE can't do squat.
And that's
all ICE can do is bring you to the Executive Office of Immigration Review and have them make a decision. That's all they can do.
And when we were on this show the last time, we showed the video of Somerville, and you mentioned all that, and you said this was coming. And of course, ICE, Tom Homan, he had to back off. They had to pull all those cases back because they across the country, court cases, they couldn't handle it. ICE couldn't handle it, so they were like, "Oh, we gotta pull this back." So these are things that executive orders that this guy has put into place, and we're now starting to see a lot of these so-called Project 2025, because these were all part of Project 2025. They're all starting to unravel, and this is where we're going to really get deep into this, because
look, the military, I think Rob will back me up, has something called the 6P principle. It says prior planning prevents piss poor performance, and that was the problem. No one bothered to sit down and run the numbers and do some project management. I mean, Sister One, you do project management, right? You sit down, you figure, if we do A, what happens when B or C happens? What's our response if B or C happens? Well, you have D and E, right? What happens if D and E happen? Well, then you have go through your process chart, right? You figure this is what we need to do. How many resources we need to do? What happens if resource breakdown? What's our backup plan? Right? ICE didn't do that. That's why they're the problem.
Not just ICE, but Doge, President Trump, his entire effing administration. There's a lot of things that we're talking about that, that they didn't realize would cause this snowball of legal things. And, like right here in Maine, you saw all the MAGA people saying Maine's going to lose this war. Maine's going to do this. And I believe it was R Squared when we talked about this. He said, this is this, and he said that they were going to lose this. And they lost. They lost in court. R Squared called it. The governor of Maine won her case about transgenders. You cannot weaponize the government and refuse to give federal funding to a state because you don't like their decisions. You can't say you want states to act on their own, and then when states act on their own and you don't agree with it, you can't say, okay, now I'm going to threaten to take away federal funding. Here's the thing about this, people. This is a big deal because he can't take stuff away simply because he's unhappy with how they did it and because it's a threat. Once Maine won this case about the transgenders, all of these other states who are losing federal funding because here in Boston, he took away homeless money from Mayor Wu. Now they filed their case because this precedent has been set. R Squared, I'm gonna let you talk because you called this one. You said this was coming. You said he's gonna lose this. regardless of your opinion on transgenders.
I mean, it's a bigger thing than just that issue. I mean, the power of the federal government is pretty broad. And the fact is that the federal government spends far too much money bailing out states who refuse to, fund their own needs. And so to some extent, the federal government does have to stop giving all this money to states. However, you can't do these things by executive order. That's what the issue is, that there's a process in place, most of which requires congressional action. Other requires agency action. And there are processes that have to be followed. We are a nation of laws, and laws mean proper procedures. And so it may be at the end of the day that there is a lawful and proper way to reduce, if not eliminate, federal spending in various states. And they could do it for different reasons, but you can't do it by executive order. And you can't do it simply for partisan politics. That's not how it works. States, states have certain authorities and they act within that authority. The federal government has certain authorities and they have to act within their authority. And, again, I've said it over and over on the show, because of our federal deficit, the federal government needs to pull back. But it can't be based on partisan politics. It has to be based on the proper exercise of authority, meaning Congress funds the budget. Congress is the one that earmarks where money goes to. And the federal government, the executive branch has some authority to prioritize within that, but they can't just undo or do in place of Congress.
And that's the biggest complaint, because I've started watching a lot more C-SPAN. And the reason why I started watching a lot more C-SPAN is because that's where the real drama is really happening. That's where you're getting all the bullshit from the horse's mouths from both sides. And, one of these things about the main thing that came up was that, there were a lot of people that were unhappy that he bypassed the congressional, how they're supposed to work, how the Senate, him bypassing all of these steps that we learned about in the 5th grade is pissing a lot of people off on the Hill, and they don't like it. They don't like it at all. And, we sit here and, people are saying these are Democratic appointed judges. No, they're not. Stop believing the misinformation that Bondi and all of these nitwits are putting out there, because they're not. These judges are Reagan appointed judges. They're Bush appointed judges. Some of these judges were appointed by Trump himself. Right. The Texas judge right now in this story, he struck down the use of Aliens Enemy Act to deport Venezuelans. Trump had decided to write this executive order to use the Alien Enemies Act to take these Venezuelans and deport them. You can't do that, because why? It strictly states an Alien Enemies Act is for invasions, and the judge says this isn't an invasion. There's no invasion here. This is scrapped. So, as Ken, an immigration attorney, this whole one of these things that Trump is doing, they're playing semantics with wording, and they're getting their asses kicked on the legal aspect. You guys are lawyers, and knowing the law and knowing that wording, how important is it to know this wording? Because you just can't come in here and just make decisions and base it on semantics. He says he has lawyers, and I'll tell you right now, his lawyers suck. They're the same lawyers that he must have had from the first term, because the way that all of his Project 2025 stuff is going, it's going the same route as his false claims of stolen election. People don't realize this, because that's where we're kind of headed. So I'm going to let you guys speak on that one. Semantics of the wording.
You hit one of my issue on the head. The thing that drives me crazy is both Rob and I spend an inordinate amount of our time parsing what words mean. In any law that comes down, the first section of the law is always the definition section. And they will list what these words mean in the statute. And this, I'll give you a prime example. This drives me crazy when people talk about illegal immigration. I've done this rant before. I'll do a very quick version right now. There is no such thing as illegal immigration. By its very definition, immigration is lawful. Now, I've talked this before, so here's the problem when these MAGA maggots and these right-wingers go on and say, no, we're not being pedantic. The law is very precise for a reason. You need to know exactly what you can do and cannot do. And I think Rob will back me up. There's something called a law can be void for vagueness. If the law is not precise, it can be deemed unconstitutional for no other reason than it's vague. Okay? Because you can't, it doesn't mean what you want. No, this is what it means. You got to do this. An invasion under the Alien Sedition Act has a very specific definition of what constitutes an invasion. A number of people crossing the border without being inspected from countries where there are brown and black people is not an invasion. It's not even a crisis. Okay? You know, this is what drives people crazy. They say, well, that's all that technical legal. Yes, you're right. It's all technical legal stuff. That's what Rob and I get paid a good amount of money to figure out. Rob spent 24 years in the Army, helping the Army navigate the UCMJ, navigate what commanders could and could not do, punishing soldiers when they stepped out of line. Okay? Talk to him about all the bureaucracy he had to go through to make sure his commanders were following the law. Okay? And that's what these Trump people don't understand. They think that we can do anything we want. No, you can't. No. And oh, by the way, getting back to your previous point, quick reminder that the executive has no authority to decide what amount of money is raised, what money is spent, and how it's spent. The only body of the government that can do that is the Congress, the representatives and the Senate. And they issue a budget every year with various line items, and they tell what you can spend on what. And the discussion. Trump has no authority over that. Okay? And that's what he doesn't understand.
You want to add to that, Squid?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good discussion. And a couple of points to add to it would be, first of all, the Alien Enemies Act specifically states in the law itself that it pertains to war. We are not at war with Venezuela or any other South American, Central American, Latin American, African. We are not at war with any of these countries from which the Trump people are complaining that we're being invaded. We're not at war with any of them. And they're not committing acts of war against us. Even if we're not in a declared war, nobody's committing acts of war against us. Right. So the statute clearly does not apply. And so there is no lawful way to apply it to this situation. If Venezuela were to be at war with the United States, then all of a sudden, now that statute would, could conceivably work. But that's not going to happen anytime soon. The other problem that we have, and we talked about this a while ago on the show when the Supreme Court issued the decision, but you remember, and obviously, the clowns like Alito and Thomas wanted this to be the case. Some of the justices, I think, regret their role in this decision. And that was when they talked about the power of the unitary executive. And I don't want to get into a full-blown legal thing here because then everybody will pull out their pillows and start going to sleep on us.
Right.
But the point is, in very brief terms, is that decision has led the Trump administration to abuse its authority because they think that it gives them the ability to take the case through the court system and be saved by the Supreme Court. Now, as you guys pointed out earlier tonight, the Supreme Court has been ruling against them most of the time. And when they've ruled in favor of them, it hasn't been a complete victory. It's only a procedural one, such as to not provide an injunction or something like that. They haven't ruled in their favor on the substance of these issues. So even though the Supreme Court did make a big mistake in not being abundantly clear in that decision about the power of the executive, this is the problem when the court plays politics the way that they did in that decision. And it does give the Trump administration, a sliver, not a credible argument, but a sliver of an argument to at least go to court. Thankfully, they're losing the cases. And as Ken pointed out, they're losing the cases by Republican appointed judges as well as Democratic appointed judges. This is not partisan. It should not matter who appoints the judges. Once the judge is on the bench, first of all, they're appointed, they're confirmed by the Senate, and there's a background process. And we don't do it very well. And certainly we can all complain about what happens with Supreme Court nominations and the circus that takes place in the Senate. I'm disgusted by that whole process. It's not what was intended to be. But the fact of the matter is, for the most part, when judges are appointed, They do a credible job. They're doing what they're supposed to do. They're not there acting as partisan legislators, which is what happens in Congress. They are there trying to interpret the law and apply the law to the case in front of them. Some of them may be a little more ideological than we would like. That happens. But most of the judges are trying to do the right thing, and it doesn't matter who appoints them, whether they're upholding or rejecting the claims by any particular administration. It doesn't matter who appointed the judges. It just doesn't. So stop with that.
That's a great segue right into my next topic, because we have a judge who was arrested, and, you know, all hell has broken out amongst the judges across this. Trump messed up. I saw MAGA applauding the fact that this woman was arrested because she wasn't allowing ICE to come in and take a client, a person out of that court. And Trump went down. He had the feds go in and arrest her. Here's the problem. A few months ago, 2 months ago on the show, I talked about this. ABA, the American Bar Association. This was just before there was an important executive order, and I felt like what happened was Roberts had ruled against Trump. It was a big deal. And Trump went and made a threat to Roberts. And the ABA backed up Roberts, and they usually never say anything, but they're on their Instagram now, and they just released a couple of statements here, and I'm going to let these guys give their views on this. So this is the view of what just happened in Texas, because Trump was very unhappy with this Texas judge for striking this down, and he put out the threats. He put out this thing about arresting judges, and this is what the ABA put out today. They put a link so you can read the excerpts from District Judge Burl Howell's opinion in this case of Trump going after the law firm. They said eliminating lawyers as the guardians of the rule of law removes a major impediment to the path to more power, which is kind of what these guys talk about here. And then in the second statement that they have let out, they said the importance of independent lawyers to ensuring the American judicial system's fair and impartial administration of justice has been recognized in this country since the founding era. This firm was targeted because it expressed support for employment policies the president does not like, and does not like the represented clients the president does not like, represented clients seeking litigations the president does not. So they went through this whole thing of the president does not like these things in this. And at the end they say, some of the president's actions, which he also does not like, that is unconstitutional retaliation and viewpoint discrimination, plain and simple. This is coming from the ABA, the American Bar Association, who usually stays on the sidelines, lets the courts go their route, and let things work out the way they work out. The American Bar Association has never, ever been this vocal in the years that I've ever been involved with politics. You guys, I feel like this isn't just a statement. I feel like this is the ABA telling lawyers and judges, hey, we're here to back you up. Don't be bullied. I feel like this is them saying, don't be bullied by this administration, because we're going to back you up and stand behind you. Ken, I'll let you go first on that.
Absolutely. The ABA is a conservative, and I don't mean politically, I mean the fact that they don't get involved. They like to be they believe they represent the best interests of the profession, and they stay out of politics. For them to come out and say this, it means you screwed up so badly. You put this organization that moves at glacial speed on any issue. I mean, they're probably still considering whether slavery is a good idea or bad, and whether there are property rights to own other human beings. But to do this, it's just, you pushed them too far. You pushed everybody too far. You like the ABA said, like you said, there are judges appointed by every single president that has come down and really smacked Donald Trump around. Even Justice Roberts has warned Trump about the importance of the independence of the judiciary. And frankly, I'm a little angry that's taken them so long. Where the heck were you 8 years ago or 4 years ago when Trump was pulling this crap. But better later than better sooner than later. Better later than never.
Your thoughts, are Squid, on this? Do you think that this Yeah. It looks like the only one he really has in his pocket now is Alito. It looks like he's kind of lost everybody else. He burned Roberts the wrong way at that first State of the Union. We saw that was the breakdown of their relationship there. Clarence Thomas seems to be kind of on this fence. I think R Squid shared a little meme about, if you need to start arresting judges, start with Clarence Thomas. I thought that was kind of funny. But your thoughts on the ABA and this thing about protecting judges now?
Yeah, in the last couple of days, there were two really excellent editorials by the Wall Street Journal. They were collective editorials, not by one, but by the entire editorial board collectively, which gives it a little bit more power. And I meant to post them on Corridor, but I didn't get to it. I didn't find them in time. But if anybody reads the Wall Street Journal, or they're being shared on a lot of the news programs, you can see, I would commend people to read them. And one of them is very much on this point. So, and they were spot on, the editorialists, about what this means. And so, look, a lot of times people want to support an administration because they support them politically in their policies, and therefore they want to support them in the courts and what have you. In this particular situation, when you see Trump going after law firms simply because they have clients who are on the other side of issues as he is, well, that's the nature of the beast, right? If you have a legal system, you have plaintiffs and you have respondents, you have the prosecution, you have the defense. You've got two sides to everything, civil or criminal, obviously. Mm-hmm. And so, you're going to have law firms, or individual lawyers for that matter, who are out there doing honorable work. They don't always agree with their clients, but they have a duty to represent them. You don't have to just take clients that you agree with. You take clients and you represent their interests, whether they're your interests or not. And so, the idea that people, when people leave various administrations, a lot of them get jobs in law firms, the lawyers will. And some of them gravitate, from Democratic administrations. Some of them might go towards certain law firms from Republican administrations to other law firms. Some law firms obviously have a mix of people. It's not in anybody's interest to be on one side or the other for purposes of getting business and representing your clients. So the issue is that for him to go after these law firms simply because they've hired people from Democratic administrations, or they've taken clients that are raising claims against a Trump policy, is the definition of tyranny. It's the definition of tyranny. That's what tyranny is. It's when you ignore the rule of law. It's when you ignore the role of law. It's when you punish people for respectably bringing cases. And remember, they're winning these cases. They're not even losing these cases. If somebody brings a frivolous case, you can get penalties against them for that. These people are winning their cases against Trump. And let's remember what some of these cases are, by the way. We're talking about January 6 cases. We're talking about the Mar-a-Lago documents cases. We're talking about his abuse of the immigration system, with people going to El Salvador without a hearing and the wrong people. We're talking about significant transgressions by the federal government. We're not talking about piddly ass little cases here. And the bottom line is, you have to respect the system. And so this is what these editorials are talking about. This is what the ABA was talking about. This is what the Supreme Court has been talking about. This is why, with the exception of Alito and Thomas, that the Supreme Court is looking less favorably. They try to be deferential to the administration in a proper way. But they can't be with this administration, because this administration is not even trying to be credible. They're not trying to work within the rule of law. They've telegraphed that from the beginning. Plus, we know from the first administration what they were talking about doing. And we know what Project 2025 says. That's why they villainize, or try to villainize, all the judges and the courts, so that people won't respect it, so that the people will enable them to ignore the courts, including the Supreme Court when they want to, because the courts really can't enforce their own judgments. They need the federal government to do it, the executive branch to do it, the marshals and otherwise, the Department of Justice and otherwise. So this is part of a much bigger crisis that we're facing.
It is. And we go back to another topic that I got to take it back, because Rob called this one. We were talking about the Alberto Garcia case, the Maryland man. And, we talked about the case that it just was starting. And you said that the Trump administration was looking for their DOJ attorneys to lie in court. And what happened was that there was a DOJ attorney working that case that Pam Bondi had put in place, and he didn't lie. This DOJ attorney said, hey, I don't have that info. The info was never given to me. And, the judge berated him. The judge blasted him, but he's like, hey, I can't give you what I don't have, and I'm not going to lie. And shortly enough after the show, you said they're asking people to do things that they shouldn't do. And sure enough, Bondi and Patel, they suspended this lawyer from the DOJ till further notice. Why? Because he refused to lie under oath in court. And I saw the Lincoln Project put out a PSA this week about all of these lawyers and attorneys who are working for the Trump administration. And I don't know if this is true, but they said if this all goes south and they start charging people with lying in court and things of that sort, they're saying that these lawyers and attorneys, just like the false claims lawyers were all being charged, these guys are all going to get charged too, just like those attorneys from then. Is that's going to happen again? We're going to see that all over again. There's a possibility, guys.
Well, I would say two things about this. First of all, the Abrego Garcia case is not about Abrego Garcia, right? It doesn't matter whether he should remain in the United States or not. The case with him is about the failure of the process, right? The failure to give him a hearing to determine whether or not he is deserving of staying in the country or not, whether there is evidence that he's committed crimes or
that topic's coming up
or some other thing. And so at the end of the day, I don't know the answer to the question, right? I don't know whether what the facts will show. I don't know what information the administration has. It doesn't sound like they have very much, and some of what they have they fabricated, right? Where the MS-13 on his knuckles was Photoshopped. That wasn't real. And so people going around saying, see, he has MS-13 on his knuckles, above his finger tattoos. No, that's photoshopped. He doesn't have MS-13 on his knuckles.
Well, we're going to get in.
And so they're lying about that. So again, I don't care about Abrego Garcia. I don't care whether he stays in the country or not. My point is that they have to follow proper procedure, and he's entitled to a hearing. And the hearing is not a trial. Trump keeps saying, oh, they're making us do trials. No, they're not making you do trials. There's a hearing. It's an administrative hearing. Ken has talked about this many times on the show. He's gone through tremendous detail to try to explain it to everybody. And it takes a long time to do it. I hope we don't do it again.
Hold on. We're going to get into Ken in a second. I got one for Ken right now.
But I'll get my pillow out. But my point is, my point is this, that if they have evidence of it, then present it. It's a 5-minute hearing, a 10-minute hearing. We're not talking about a multi-day trial here. It's a very simple thing to do. And if you're going to send people to El Salvador, to send them to a gulag, to send people where you claim you can't get them back, then you better be sure you have the right person in the first place before you do it. That's the problem here. And the other thing I was going to say about, specifically about the legal claims, they fired that attorney because he wouldn't lie for them in court. He wouldn't sacrifice his license. We train all of our young attorneys. You never sacrifice your license. You never sacrifice your integrity for any case, any client, any issue. You never do that. We all make mistakes and we learn from them. We own them. We get better. But you don't sacrifice your integrity or your license. And so I respect that attorney. I don't know what his background is. I don't know, what political persuasion he might have, but he didn't lie in court. And I will tell you this. We talked about this on the show, I think, goes back years now. But, when the Trump team was lying about the 2020 election, there were sanctions, right? Rudy Giuliani was in significant doo-doo for all the lies he was telling in court, trying to claim the election was stolen or rigged and all the other nonsense from 2020. And he wasn't alone. There were a bunch of attorneys that lost their legal licenses, that got their licenses suspended, that had to pay fines. There was all kinds of disciplinary action based on what their bar associations chose to do, what agreements they made. And so, on the one hand, we don't want to be too quick to do that because we do want to respect advocacy. And sometimes you get, you got to push for your client, whatever. But when you have members of the administration, people from the Department of Justice, the U.S. Attorney's Office, and other Department of Justice attorneys going into court and lying, and then making statements outside of court, also lying, things that they know to be lies or things that are extremely reckless where they should know are lies, there needs to be sanctions for that. And Pam Bondi needs to lose her law license. And a lot of these, and I don't say that lightly. I didn't think a lot of people in various administrations should lose their licenses or be punished, because you got to respect that there's a political game going on. But when it's overt dishonesty, and that dishonesty is not just in the name of politics, it's hurting individual people, we can't tolerate that. And these bar associations need to start yanking some licenses or at least suspending people.
Man, hold on. Great. No, hold on, Ken. Great segue into Trump troubles, because this one's coming up for Ken right here. Trump troubles. This is exactly what he was talking about. This is Stephen Miller. Stephen Miller is the guy that you're seeing a lot of right now in this due process. Now, he got up here today about the Abrego Garcia case, and he went on this whole thing about due process. And here's a video of what he's referring to. And here's the thing, Ken knows both of these topics. He's an immigration attorney and he's a defense attorney. And when I saw this video, I said, Ken is a defense attorney. For you all to be using this to say that this man is running illegal. Hold on, here's the video right here.
Hello, sir.
This video is from Cookeville, Tennessee. All right. Abrego Garcia is being pulled over in a van filled with...
It's 146. Yes. Go back to work.
Gotcha. Where are you working at? Where?
St. Louis, Missouri.
Missouri?
Yes, sir.
Gotcha. Okay.
But I'm from Maryland.
Okay. Come right over here.
Okay.
So nothing illegal?
No, sir.
Where did you say you was coming from?
So I coming from to St. Louis, Missouri. The project is over there. So right now it's done. 2 weeks over there.
Okay.
So right now I'm going back to home.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So stay right there. I'm gonna get my dog out. Okay. But did you see how squatted back there?
There's 8 people.
I didn't know that. They put an extra row of seats in there.
Yeah. So he's getting paid, all these people, probably to Maryland, I would say, if I had my guess.
He said they all work together. That's what he's telling me. But he's the one that knows.
So let me ask you this. They don't have any luggage in there, right? And if you get them out, they're going to have a tube of toothpaste, and they're going to have toothbrushes in their pockets, I guarantee it.
All right, so that's the police video from Clarksville. So Abrego gets pulled over for speeding, 75 miles an hour in a 65 mile an hour zone. He's in a van with an extra seat, one of these extra seats in it. And, you know, he answers every question. He's polite. He then calls his boss, who owns the vehicle because it's a work truck. And they ask him, where is he coming from? He says, St. Louis, Missouri. We did a job. And one officer assumes that he is transporting trafficking, illegal aliens across it. He says, hey, if you check these guys, I bet you they all got toothbrushes and toothpaste in their pockets and blah, blah, blah. And you can feel the tension with the other officers there, because this is just an assumption. Now, right now, MAGA is using this and saying he was trafficking humans, as you guys have seen all over the news. They're using this video and they're saying he's trafficking. This is him trafficking. But if you look into the comments across the country, anybody who does construction and hires labor, such as Mexicans, they're telling you this here is like the country's nation standard of hiring low-wage construction workers, and you send them out on jobs to do construction jobs, and then they go back home to wherever they came from. Again, this is an officer, and I know, Ken, you're a defense attorney. There's two things here. The one officer assumes that this guy is guilty of this with no investigation. And now Stephen Miller is up here in the White House promoting this video as proof of all of these things, and the reason why he doesn't deserve due process, because he was illegally trafficking people. I know you must, Ken.
Where do I begin? Okay, first of all, the Supreme Court and most state courts have said Traffic stops are meant to be investigator, meaning they're not an investigation for criminal offenses. They're there to stop briefly to make sure you're complying with the various traffic regulations, including speeding, having proper equipment, having the car properly insured, and making sure the person operating the motor vehicle is properly licensed. That's it. They're not supposed to be going doing other stuff. Number two, what an incredibly racist statement. Why? Because you see a bunch of brown people in a construction vehicle, you assume. I mean, can you be any more racist? Maybe you should be, having a blood group tattooed on your shoulder, and maybe some jackboots and some black breeches. Okay. Number three, you're not allowed to ask people about their immigration status. It's not relevant because, as I said before, immigration status is not a criminal offense. It has nothing to do with it. Okay? Number four, there is no evidence they were trafficking him. Again, this is what we said before. We got to look to the definition sections of the statute. In order for you to be convicted of trafficking human beings for the purposes of evading immigrations and customs checkpoints, guess where you have to originate? Anyone want to guess?
I'll let you answer.
You have to originate from outside of the country. If you're moving people within the United States, even if they are not people who have either are U.S. citizens, lawful permanent residents, non-immigrant visa holders with a work permit, employment authorization document, or people with employment authorization documents, that's not trafficking. Because your starting point's in the United States, going to another point in the United States, that's not trafficking because you haven't crossed an international border. Okay? So before you open your goddamn mouth, would you talk to one of your 10,000 lawyers you have on staff and say, hey, can you give me a memo on what constitutes human trafficking? Put in little bullet points. Okay? We do it all the time. I'm sure Rob has done it. I know I've done it. I've given people nice little memos with bullet points saying, check all the boxes. If you've done A, B, C, and D, then you got this result. If it's not, it's this result. It was beyond aggravating.
The video is crazy.
Wrong, and it's that they're intentionally being dishonest to manipulate people. They're not trying to be correct.
That's what's scary about it. And that's what's scary. They're sharing this video, and anyone with legal comment, like I tell people all the time when I'm debating with people on my own page, I say, hey, I've learned a lot from being on the show with two guys who are attorneys. There's things that I've learned a lot from. And when I saw this video, I'm like, okay, that's an assumption. That's not a statement. That's an assumption from that police officer. That doesn't prove anything. Yet Stephen Miller's up here in the White House, and they're sharing this video and saying, this is proof. This guy is this. And, they're pulling up his abuse records with his wife. Again, that was something for the courts to determine here. That's not a reason for you to ship this man to El Salvador. That was a case that was handled in here in the courts. His wife actually backtracked, and whatever happened, happened. So you can't use this as a way. And here's the thing, people. I'm just going to be honest. The other one is in Maryland, where he was in a Home Depot parking lot waiting for work, which is what happens at the Home Depot early in the morning. These immigrants, they wait in the Home Depot. A guy will come that owns a construction business and say, hey, I need 5 guys to do a roof today. And these 5 guys will come. Well, guess what? The cops rolled up. Abrego was there with 10 other guys, and some of the guys that he was with were connected to MS-13. But guess what? That doesn't make him a gang member. That doesn't make him guilty. Ken is a defense attorney. How many times we've had to fight those cases where somebody's assumed to be in a gang just because they're at the nightclub?
Oh, God. I'm going to start one of my rants, so I'm giving everyone fair warning, okay? The amount of times I have heard this phrase used in police reports, search warrant applications, and hearings on pretrial detention. This individual was found in a high crime area. Therefore, he must be having criminal intent. Now, Sister One, you live in Brockton. How many times I have heard people say, there's a great situation where, oh, what's the road that passes by your street? Oh, I forget its name. Oh, come on, I'm losing my mind.
My street is Crescent Street, but Spring Street's the street with all the. Spring Street.
No, it connects downtown to the shopping plaza. What's that road? Oh, come on, why can't I think of it?
Warren Ave.
It's Center Street.
Center Street. Yes.
Center Street. Okay. How many times I have heard that anyone on any place in Center Street, they're in a high crime area. Drives me crazy because there are a lot of legitimate businesses on Center Street. We can name a dozen of them off the top of our head, right? And Center Street connects the downtown Brockton, where the courthouse is, with Massasoit Community College, right? You go over the courthouse, get on Main Street, bang a right on Center Street, take Center Street all the way down. You bang a right, you go to Massasoit Community College. Takes you what, 15 minutes with no traffic? But yeah, I have been told repeatedly that entire area is a high crime area, including the courthouse. So I guess I must be gang affiliated because of all the time I spent in the courthouse.
Oh man, good stuff. Anything to add to that, Rob?
No.
All right, let's move on. This was Easter Sunday. Zelensky met with President Trump, who had kind of an epiphany that Putin isn't the nice guy that he thought he was, because Putin had signed a ceasefire on Easter, and guess what? He didn't hold to it. He ended up shooting missiles into Ukraine, and he turned around, he met with Zelensky. Well, what's come out of this meeting? Well, the word is that Zelensky might be signing a deal to give those minerals up to the U.S., for EV cars and things of that sort that everybody's been talking about. I'm sure Putin's going to be pissed, but I feel like this is a double-edged sword. I feel like Trump kind of bullied this guy into those minerals. So we're going to see what's going to happen. I don't know if Zelensky actually approved of this yet. Go ahead, Ken. Did he? I don't think he approved of this.
Okay. So I thought that Zelensky was being bullied. So I called up. Actually, I didn't call because I don't talk to people on the phone anymore. We don't do that. I sent an email to my cousin's husband. He works for Bear Stearns. I want to know if he knew anything about this, because Bear Stearns has been one of the big financing agencies of these mining projects. They've been trying to get a hold of this for 200 years. They really want to go. And he told me, he said, we all got excited when we first heard, because we finally thought we had the deal. So one of our people got a hold of the agreement. And then they all got depression. Apparently, what the agreement states is that at the conclusion of the armed hostilities, the Ukraine will invite the U.S. to do a mineral survey, provided that the companies that come in meet the Ukrainians, whatever Ministry of Minerals, Natural Resources approval rating for the survey. And if there are sufficient minerals, the U.S. and Ukraine will then further enter in negotiations about their extraction. And I said, well, that sounds like a definite promise that maybe you'll do something in the future. He said, yeah, it was, everybody was said, this is nothing. This isn't worth the paper it's printed on. Because nothing's going to happen until after the armed hostilities are over with. So that's what we got. And we weren't guaranteed anything. We were allowed to do a mineral survey. And I asked him, what does that mean? He says, we don't know, because no one bothered to define it in the agreement. It could mean everything from doing test drilling to what do you call it when you run a ground penetrating radar over something?
Geotagging?
Geotagging, to just going in there and getting various soil samples. He said,
crazy.
We'll
see, because I don't think he's agreed to anything. I think they're looking it over, and then he's going to decide. Also, in the Trump troubles, this one's for Rob. I got to get his thoughts on this. Last week, President Trump come out and he signed it. He got ready to get this other executive order ready. He wants to eliminate Veterans Day and replace it with World Victory Day to celebrate World War I, and then add another federal holiday to celebrate victory for World War II. He said, and this is how ignorant he was, he said that most veterans are not deserving of being celebrated on Veterans Day, so we should celebrate victories more than we should celebrate veterans. Fuck around and find out, veterans. All you veterans who voted for President Trump, fuck around and find out. This is what he truly thinks of you. You all thought that he cared about he don't care about you guys. Rob has said it on this show. He doesn't give two craps about veterans. Two craps. And now he wants to eliminate Veterans Day. A day that we've all, for years. Your thoughts on this one? Rob, the guy never ceases to amaze me. it's
Yeah.
And the reason was bullshit. I felt like the reason he gave shit all over the veterans across the country. Honest.
There is no reason. I can't even understand his point about it. But we do know from repeated comments he made in his first term and now that he despises veterans, that he despises anybody who would give of themselves in service. He thinks people who serve the nation are losers and suckers. Remember, that's a quote. He has referred to veterans as losers and suckers. He has said, I don't know why anybody would volunteer to serve in the military. He doesn't know why anybody would volunteer to be in public service. He has made these comments repeatedly. So it's not like he just said something. And we know that he means it because he refuses to have any wounded veterans around him. We know that he doesn't even want any veterans around him. And so it is clear that he has nothing but disdain for those who wore the uniform, living or dead. Gold Star families mean nothing. And keep in mind, recently, he played golf at Mar-a-Lago or Trump National in Florida, Doral, I think he was playing. But he was playing golf when he should have been in Dover, Delaware, to receive the bodies of those who had recently died. This is a man who keeps, repeating the nonsense about the Afghanistan withdrawal. And it wasn't done right. We already talked about that on the show numerous times. There were problems with the way we left Afghanistan. We covered it. No need to revisit it.
Right. Yep.
But remember, we did it because he made the agreement with the Taliban that forced us to do it. Now, we could have done it better. I'm not, but he forced that agreement. And the man who wants to be critical and fire the generals who were involved, and obviously he criticized President Biden, who, of course, was commander-in-chief when that decision was made. Yet, he can't go to the airport when the fallen on his watch were flown home. That is a dignified ceremony. And every president, Republican, Democrat, has always been there. Always been there. And they don't get credit for it because we don't often televise it. It just happens. Not Trump. And he didn't do it any other time because he has disdain for those people. He has disdain for any of us who wore the uniform. And so for him to say, we don't need Veterans Day, veterans don't deserve a holiday, let's just call it the day the U.S. won World War I. Yes, we helped the British and the French win World War I, but we came in late. It wasn't the U.S. victory, it was an Allied victory. And Veterans Day does commemorate the end of World War I. That's when we picked to do it. The 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month when World War I ended.
Preach.
So there's no reason to change that. And then the other day he wants to do is Victory in Europe Day for World War II. Same answer. We already commemorate these things. And why is he about it, right? It has nothing to do with honoring the United States veterans. This is the greatest generation. I just watched last week, excuse me, a brief segue here, guys. But I just watched, I'd always wanted to watch this, the Spielberg and Hanks thing called The Pacific, which was the follow-on to Band of Brothers. I had never seen it before, right?
Okay.
I had seen Band of Brothers when it first came on.
Oh, great.
And
Great
I'd always
series.
wanted, it was amazing. And I'd always wanted to watch The Pacific. I don't know why I never did. I watched it last week. I was a mess at the end of it. I'll admit to you guys, I was a mess. I had to sit by myself for several hours. Anyway, the point being that just kind of, shows in great detail the sacrifice of the people in World War II, the Americans who gave everything to serve in World War II. Nobody has a right to complain about a damn thing based on what those people had to go through. The hell that was like, month after month after month. And for Donald Trump, or any president, but he's the first and only president thus far out of the 45 we've had to have such disdain for people like that. It's disgusting.
Ken, you wanted to add? I saw.
Yeah, a couple things. Does anyone here know how Veterans Day came about? Why it's a federal holiday? Why we get November 11th off?
I was young when that came to be, so I remember how it came to be. I don't remember how, but I remember the whole thing about it.
A law. It's a law passed by Congress. You can't change it unless you amend the law. Now, Veterans Day was originally referred to as Armistice Day.
That's it.
As Rob pointed out, that's why it's on the 11th hour, 11th day, 11th month. It was changed to Veterans Day after World War II. And we do have holidays of victory in Europe, VE Day and victory over Japan. We have them. We don't celebrate them very much, but they do exist on the calendar. Go look them up. And Donald Trump wouldn't know when VE Day was if you pointed a gun to his head. And I say this as the descendant of a number of World War II veterans who have all passed away. They're all dead. And let me just tell you, they never talked about their service. I only found out about their service after they died, and I was helping their wives and children get veterans benefits, because as a spouse and children of a veteran, you can get certain veterans benefits for when they pass. Well, one of the things I had to do was get their DD-214s and other documentation. And I couldn't believe this. I remember when my Uncle Nat died, I helped my father out because I was quite young at the time. And my Uncle Nat had a Purple Heart. I didn't realize this. And I read the citation. He was at the Battle of the Bulge. I didn't realize that. And what happened was, as I found out from my Aunt Laura, he had gone up to go to the bathroom when the Germans decided to shell his position. And he was basically raped by artillery from his toe all the way up to his back. Despite that fact, he crawled back, injured, mind you, to his position to help his friends get out of the foxhole who were also injured. Okay? So he had shrapnel from his toes all the way up to his shoulders on his right side. And the only reason he wasn't dead is because he had to happen to be pissing on a tree, and the tree took half the shells, and he took the other half. I didn't know that until he died. And I went to my father and said, "Did you know that?" And I said, "Well, I knew Nat had been injured, but he never talked about it. And we didn't bring it up." I went to his wife, my Aunt Laura, and I said, "Did you know about this?" And I said, "Of course I know about it. I was white. I was married to him for 50 years. I know everything about the guy." I said, "Why didn't Dad ever talk about it?" And he said, "Because he felt lucky. He came out of that war alive. There are a lot of guys he went to high school with who came out dead." Okay? And I had the same conversation with the spouses, except for my Uncle Ron, who actually talked about his service in the war. And they said, everybody did something for the war, and you got injured, you didn't talk about it, it was just your duty, and you went home and you got on with your lives. I said, there wasn't anybody who didn't serve in some capacity. You know, even if you were a woman, you were on the home front in the factories or raising money. And we honor these people for their sacrifice because they don't talk about it. And for Cadet Bone Spurs to sit there and say they don't deserve it, you disgusting piece of crap. Remember when Bill Clinton got all the crap for dodging the draft in Vietnam? Remember that? Yeah, Trump does the whole thing, and there's crickets. To say these people who spend, even today, even our veterans in the military, they have to put up with an incredible amount of crap. Even the one that don't get injured. Just, the station away from home, the relentless travel, the training, the fact you're never in the same place for more than 2 or 3 years. the separation from their families, the isolation, not to mention the PTSD and the other physical problems when they come home. And you're saying these people don't deserve all to make sure that you can go play golf at Mar-a-Lago and don't have to speak German or Japanese or Russian? You piece of freaking garbage. You're disgusting.
Like it is. Felicia's in the chat. She says her daughter Bella's listening, saying how disrespectful that's leader. In the next topics there, today, Canadian Prime Minister showed up, Mark Carney. He met with President Trump in the Oval Office. It was a little bit more subdued than it was when Zelensky met, but he also let it be known that Canada is not for sale, not ever. Trump tried to double down and tried to push the 51st state on him, and he tried to push the thing about tariffs and thing, and he just let him know again, not for sale. And he embarrassed Trump, let him know. And then Trump had a meeting yesterday with Roger Goodell, and I forget the black lady, and Trump was questioned about the AI photo of him as the Pope and how disgraceful it was. He went on to lie. This guy went on to lie. You got to see the video because Roger Goodell is standing behind him and there's a black lady to the other side of Trump. Trump comes out and he does this crazy, unbelievable lie about how he didn't create it. AI must have created it. He doesn't even know. He said he just saw it. He went on this whole lie rant. The reporter turns around and says, well, the photo was posted on the White House government website, the White House government Instagram, and it was shared on Truth Social.
That lying bitch!
Roger Goodell and the lady in the background were like, whoa. But how did Trump answer? Lies on top of lies on top of lies. People, if you don't see this stuff that's going on, you need to wake up. Because this is just a shame. It's a travesty. It is the worst presidency that we've probably ever had in our lifetime. And I'm upset. And it gets even worse because Hegseth now, who is a joke, who should have never gotten in the position, after being checked, they've now found out that he's had 12 Signal Pentagon chats. And there are some other issues here now because, as Rob talked about on this show, Rob's a military guy. He is at that position where he is Secretary of Defense. Everything he does is supposed to be documented and kept record of. He's not supposed to be on Signal talking about important stuff where it erases after 24, 48 hours. Now, he's under fire because he cut the weapons delivery that was supposed to go to the Ukraine that was in agreement with Biden that Trump had not stopped yet. They've been still sending weapons from the Biden administration to Ukraine as promised. But Hegseth, for some reason, decided to stop the shipments. And now the word has gotten out. I don't know, Rob. I guess when shipments of weapons are being sent, there are several countries involved because the weapons have to be sent through certain countries so other countries aren't implicated, I guess. And I guess these countries were calling and saying, hey, these weapons didn't get to checkpoint whatever. And then come to find out, they realized that Hegseth had stopped the shipment. And then Trump got the call and he blows up and he's like, well, I never authorized that. But here's the weird thing. How do we know Trump's not lying? Because the guy effing lies so much. How do we know he didn't tell Hegseth to do this? Because we all know Hegseth he's a yes man. He does what he's told. And then I hate to say this, guys. I think Trump is the guy who would tell him, don't send the weapons. And then when the shit hits the fan like it did, he says, I didn't tell him to do that. I feel like he lied. I'm going to go around the horn. I'm going to ask the military guy, Rob, on that one.
Well, yeah, I mean, look, Trump has been a devotee of Roy Cohn, who was, a notorious bastard back in the McCarthy era and died a notorious bastard. And Roger Stone kind of replaced him in the more modern ways. And Trump's whole philosophy of public life is to just lie, 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 lie. And if you keep repeating the lie, eventually enough people will forget that it was a lie. And so you never admit the truth. You never admit a mistake. You never take responsibility. You just lie and deflect. and eventually people forget. And so when it comes to something like Ukraine, people aren't going to forget that easily. Now, in this particular case, obviously Hegseth is completely incompetent. And so it's remotely possible that he screwed up. It's also incredibly possible that Trump lied about whether he told him to do it or not. So the fact is, the both of them are lying, right? I mean, if Trump is speaking, he's lying. If Hegseth is speaking, he's lying. I mean, there's really no other way to look at it. And that's what's despicable about this, because we knew that Trump was against supporting Ukraine, and we knew that he favored Russia. That wasn't a secret in the campaign. We know it from his first term. We know it from a lot of things. And so the biggest fear about a Trump 2 is going to be what happens with Ukraine. And so Hegseth is on board with that. So it doesn't really matter at the end of the day who said what to who. We know this is Trump administration policy. They don't even have to lie about it. They campaigned on it. They campaigned on not supporting Ukraine anymore.
Good point.
And now I have tremendous problems with that change of strategy. This wasn't like a Biden thing or a Democratic thing or a liberal thing. This was a United States national security thing. And it shouldn't be a partisan issue. And it's not. The Republicans in Congress were all supporting Ukraine. It was only Trump that doesn't. Now they're all too afraid to speak up about it. So it's really a disgusting failure. It's a disgusting, betrayal of, an unofficial ally.
Ken, anything to add to that?
No, Rob, as usual, nailed it in one.
Nice. Okay, and then also Mike Waltz was fired for what they say isn't the fault of putting a reporter into the signal chat. They're saying that he had spoke with the Israeli leader about bombing Iran behind Trump's back without consulting with Trump. Again, here's another situation where Trump is saying, I never said that. I never had that discussion with Mike Waltz. And he's saying that Waltz acted on that without him. Again, who do you trust? You can't. And this is what happens. And here's the thing. He's fired. But then guess what happens? Now there's a falling out with Marco Rubio. So now Marco Rubio is being shuffled. They're saying Waltz is going to come back. And that, again, lets you know this administration is a hot mess. It's a hot mess. You've got people being fired and called back to work, people who have been, they haven't checks and balances. It's crazy. And then to make matters worse, anybody want to add on that the Mike Waltz drama, Ken?
No, I think you covered it.
Okay. President Trump comes out and eliminates funding, which is funny because Rob and us, we were talking about this in our chat, and he had shared a graph, and President Trump has come out to get his base all fired up, and he says, hey, I'm going to do an executive order, and I'm going to eliminate funding for NPR and PBS. Here's the funny thing, people. Rob shared the graph, and then I read the stories about the NPR and the PBS. Let's take NPR, for example. Most of their money for their operations and stuff, more than 90% comes from donors and sponsors. They really don't get that much. If you go on my page, it says exactly how much the federal government gives. But here's the thing. Trump does these things to get his base fired up and say, yeah, they're promoting these type of values. It's great that he took that money away. It isn't the amount of money that people are all thinking. When he does these things, people think that the government is funding like 90% of NPR's budget or PBS's budget. It's not. It's not. NPR and PBS are pretty much self-funded from donors and sponsors and grants from people who leave. Ken, you've been involved with this. You've done Democratic. You know how this all works. You were the first one, to be honest, who turned me on to it. When I first met you, you talked to me and told me about NPR, and I started listening to NPR because of you.
Well, I'm glad you did. But yeah, remember, NPR is what they call a government corporation, which means it's funded partially by the government. The government does appoint its board, but it's an independent entity, so they don't get their funding, or they get not very much, from the U.S. federal government. They were created during the Johnson administration as a response of the, quote, cultural wasteland that TV was. If you remember, at the time, the FCC chairman testified before Congress and says that the American television was becoming a cultural wasteland of lowbrow sitcoms and game shows. Ironically, he didn't say anything about sports. That's why NPR and PBS were created, was to, raise the bar, if you like, for the viewing public. And it was a conservative reaction to the, quote, liberal media. Ironically, that's why it was created. So Trump can go down there and say that's all he wants. But here's the problem. Trump, you pointed out correctly, is getting his base all fired up, and his base is dumber than pig shit. They don't read, they don't care. Exactly, he's speaking to them. And it doesn't matter what the truth is. As Rob pointed out for him, these people are being deceitful intentionally. And they know it, and they don't care. In fact, they want to be deceitful. So, why are we all surprised? Why are we getting angry about this? This is Trump 101. And nothing's going to change until he winds up impeached and in jail.
Anything you want to add to that, Squared, on NPR? Yeah, I feel like it's smoke and mirrors. I felt like this whole thing was just smoke and mirrors, and I thought the timing was funny because you had shared the graph like weeks before this announcement came, and I popped in my head. Also, President Trump has threatened to impose 100% tariffs on all films produced outside the U.S. In other words, anime, Japanese films, all these movies, and Hollywood was like, no, that's not going to happen, bro. So this is going to be up for a fight. This isn't going to happen. And then as we get out of here, I have a video to show you guys, and this is kind of what the situation in this country is all about. Former Vice President Mike Pence visited Boston this weekend. He was at the JFK facility out there in South Boston. Mike Pence was here in Boston because he received the JFK Profile and Courage Award. And I don't know if you all know how big of an award this is, but here's the video real quick, about a minute long, but I want you guys to hear the speech. The reason why he was picked for this award is because Mike Pence stood his ground against President Trump, who wanted him to not certify the election results. He wanted him to help him overthrow this government. And I see a lot of MAGA people out here talking shit about Mike Pence right now about receiving this award. But I want you guys to hear this from the horse's mouth, and then I'm going to go right to Rob on this one to get his thoughts, because this is a bigger deal than what people realize. And listen to what Mike Pence says. Here we go.
In the long history of the world, only a few generations.
Vice President Pence
I don't know, did you guys,
put his life and career and that of his family on the line to execute his constitutional responsibilities. His actions preserve the fundamental democratic principle of free and fair elections. And we are proud to honor him with the 2025 Profile and Courage Award.
I will always believe,
he spoke
by
on
God's
everything.
grace, I did my duty that day to support the peaceful transfer of power under the Constitution of the United States of America. Now, people who know me know I'm a conservative, but I'm not in a bad mood about it. I believe in a strong defense, limited government, the right to life, and I'm going to go out on a limb and say that might put me in the minority in this row. But I also have differences with members of my own party.
I wonder if he might be gearing
spending,
up to run.
Tariffs, and my belief that America is the leader of the free world.
That's what this speech gives me the vibes. If you guys check the speech
and
out,
must continue to stand with Ukraine until the Russian invasion is repelled and a just and lasting peace is secured. The Bible says he keeps his oath even when it hurts.
Yeah.
I know something
He's an
about
idiot.
that. But to forge a future together, we have to find common ground.
Well, I mean, this is a woman who got up there and was talking about A1.
And I hope in some small way.
And she was supposed to be talking about AI, and the
My presence here tonight is a reminder.
AI, and she's like, no, A1. And
that whatever differences we may have as Americans,
just scary.
The Constitution is the common ground on which we
They're
stand.
saying that the word is that Kash Patel spends more time in the nightclub than he does running the FBI. All right, we're coming back in. All right, we're back here. That was, man, eye-opening. First of all, I feel like Mike Pence is running. I feel like that speech right there is letting us know that Mike Pence is probably going to be running for either maybe independent or Republican. That was a deep speech right there for him for taking home this award in Boston. That award, R-squared, that JFK Profile and Courage Award, was for what we talked on January 5th. The show we had on Tuesday was called The Calm Before the Storm. And then January 6th, all hell broke loose. And part of that big thing was that Trump mentioned and threatened and told Mike Pence to pretty much do the right thing. And I remember January 5th, you said it, Rob. You said Mike Pence is going to do the right thing. He's standing, you said it. You said he's standing on the side of history right now. He has to make, and he chose the right side of history. I'll let you go first because you called it that day.
Well, yeah, I mean, back at the time, I believed that Pence would do the right thing, and he did do the right thing. You know, the Profile and Courage Award is a huge thing. It's national, international. Everybody knows about it for the most part. It's a significant honor. Does Pence deserve this particular honor for doing his job, which is basically what he did? I don't know. I think it really is a remarkable reference to where we are in this country, that the fact that he didn't steal the election is deserving of an award, right? It's the negative, right? Mm-hmm. He didn't do anything. He just didn't steal the election, right? He didn't support Trump's efforts to overthrow the election. So, you know, it's kind of an interesting thing. I at the end of the day, I thought his remarks were good. He's clearly running. Now, he ran in 24. He didn't do very well. I don't know if his fortune will change in 2028. We'll have to see. I'm certainly not going to support him. But, I don't know really what to make of it. But, yes, he stood in the breach on the 20th. Obviously the January 6th rioters were going to kill him. So, he did show courage in that regard, although at the time that he was doing it, but we'll see how history writes this chapter. It's too soon.
Okay. Ken, anything to add on that? Because it was here in Boston.
Yeah, I mean, the old joke, a hero is a coward who ran out of places to hide. And that's exactly what I feel about Mike Pence. Yeah, he did stand up to the rioters. He should get credit for that. It would have been, and he did cost him his political career with Trump, which is, something. But yeah, he was doing, that was his goddamn job. And I agree. This is the word we've got, that we're rewarding people for simply doing their jobs. That's how far we've fallen. And look at George Washington, if I may, to give an example of the contrast. When he was the head of the Continental Army, he was probably the most powerful person in the continental U.S. Yet the moment the peace treaty was signed with England, he rode all night to Philadelphia to hand in his commission because he was no longer needed. This man could have been dictator. He could have demanded anything. He had the only standing army in the entire continent, yet he rode all night to walk into a room full of men, all who have been basically screwing him for 8 years, not getting his army the supplies they need, then said, I'm done. I've done my duty. I am now surrendering my commission, and I'm going home. Now, we can talk about, the enslaved people he had and all that stuff, but he did that. Then he got elected president, and he served for 2 terms. He said that at the end of 2 terms, he probably could have won a 3rd, 4th, 5th, 9th term. But he said, nope, no man should serve more than 2 terms, and he retired to Mountain Vernon. He died there. Okay? Imagine someone doing that today. That's a profile in courage. And now we're just have some guy who actually, stood up to a mob and said, no, you're not going to coerce me into doing something illegal. Well, I suppose it's better than nothing. As my grandfather used to tell me, he's a poor man. He took his victories where he could get them. Okay, this is a victory for our republic. I'll take it.
Yeah, like I said, I think it's a bigger message to those who are there. Let me get into the shows. We get ready to get out of here. These are the beanies that everybody brought to support the show. Those are the shows I produced, Drafting the Circuits, which will be on tomorrow night. Oscar Mike Radio on Thursday. Co-produced Matty C Sports. You Are the Star Karaoke. Thank you for everybody for coming out to Brockton Beer Company last Friday night. We had a good time out there. Also, Brockton Beer Kids Eat Free And then Emerge Career, if you're trying to get a CDL, you just got out of jail, make sure your cases are clear. Emerge Career will help you get your CDL, which is very important to just get your foot in the door. Journey Church in Kentucky, Thursdays 3 to 6, Sundays at 10:30. That's the food pantry, so reach on and get there in Pottstown, Kentucky. Sunday Wake and Bake, 20% off all pre-rolls. The Saturday Bishop Training and Fitness, Stay Young Fitness. And then this week, if you go to Prestige, Teachers and Nurses, free car wash. And then the Northeast Slingshots event is moved to rain date, which is next Saturday, May 10th. I won't be there. I have a mandatory class. And then my guest last week, he will be at the Bike with Bat on May 15th. Make sure to head down there and show him support. And then the Kite and Bike Festival is May 17th. Moses Rodriguez, who's running for mayor, is going to be on this show. May 20th, I might be doing the show from BCA, so stay put. And the first annual ice cream festival in Brockton will take place on June 1st. And then the Juneteenth celebration takes place on June 14th. Then Monkey Wrench Wellness, she's in the chat. She does free warrior yoga for veterans and first responders every other Wednesday. So if you want to check her out and reach out to her. And then bat buses are free till June 30th. And then that's it. Oh, Veterans Run to Home Base takes place July 26th at Fenway Park. And that's it. We're going to get out of here. I'm going to let my guys go around the horn. I'm going to start with Ken Diesel.
I'd like to thank all of our listeners and viewers, all 12 of you. Like to wish everyone a little late, but happy May Day, International Day of the Worker. Raise the red banner. Doing nothing else to piss off Donald Trump. And also for those you people like Rob and I who are celebrating Law Day, which is also May 1st. Big coincidence there. Like to wish everybody who has come. We're not going to be here on Memorial Day. Like to wish everyone a happy and pleasant Memorial Day, and also to keep in our hearts those men and women who gave what President Lincoln once referred to as the last full measure of devotion to our country. And like till June, folks, stay safe, stay warm, stay cool, stay informed.
Squid.
Hey, thanks for listening. Hope you found the show informative and look forward to seeing you next time.
And you said you're going to have some articles coming up on the corridor pretty soon for some of the stuff that's going on?
I'm always planning on it.
Nice. Good stuff. Hey, I want to thank everybody for tuning in the show tonight. Everybody who's in the chat. Christopher Gagney, thank you for hanging out. He said, not about what you've done for me before, about how I can use you now. That's his comment to veterans. I get you. Good stuff. Felicia, thank you for tuning in the show. Monkey Wrench Wellness. Everybody, thank you for supporting the show. Turnbuckles and Spilt Liquor is coming up at 9:30. It's your boy Sis One. SpongeBob, do me a favor. Take us home.
See you next Tuesday.
Thank you for listening to The Booth on Hoobazoo and HatcherRadio.com. Please follow the Facebook page and subscribe to the podcast at Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. The Booth is a Sinister One production hosted by Sinister One.
I've got to start hanging out with friends that are a little more intelligent and understand politics and stuff. It's just that I'm up on this level up here, and all my friends are down here. Me, nah. You guys, nah. Maybe a little more down in here. Screw you guys, I'm going home.
I smoke, I drink, I do my thing. These bitches hating, so you know I got to make it plain. Don't do cocaine with your chick, my main. We stick together, true forever, yeah, you know we bang. I miss those days, which was easy. If only I make it, this on repeat. Now that I done upgraded, I've been upstate, but y'all think I'm playing. And I got a hit now for these weak assholes who think I ain't slaying. Try me, and I'll probably end up laughing, cause I never back down. I'm that chick with a clean ass whip, I don't need that shit, I got my own now. I get hurt, I get tired of fussing, fighting, guess I gotta crack down. Don't mess with me, cause on everything, I'ma have to bring the whole city out.
WHOOBAZOO, that's Hoobazoo.com.
Enter website.